Hello. Hope you guys are all having a good one. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to use Liquigen to a very basic extent. Okay, so this is for pure beginners, people that haven't used any other Django effects software, so not Emitter or GeoGen, or if you've got very basic understanding of them and have only spent a little bit of time in either. This will be basic. This is still, helpful for everybody who has, gotten their hands on Liquigen and has tried it a little bit, just in case there's something I mention here that you don't know about already. And, this is still applicable for anybody that uses their other software, whether that's Emitter, GeoGen, or potentially future programs that Django Effects makes, as I'll be going over some pretty common things. So unless they completely overwrite their UI again or something changes, you'll generally find things to be pretty similar. So just wanted to preface that first. So there's going to be very basic. I'm just going to be going over the pure basics, some basics of what different nodes are for, and some basic controls and parameters within them, but I'm not going to be going over every single parameter. I'm not going to be going over how to make every single thing in it, and so forth. This is just for pure basic and pure learning, but don't expect everything else, because one, it's still alpha. This is the first version that has come out, so things are bound to change. This is only really for when the first alpha is out. This hopefully is still applicable in later stages, but I will probably remake one in later stages, maybe when it gets fully released, so it's a bit more updated and I'm not missing things. So yeah, hopefully this is helpful, and let's get into it. Now, first off, this is the home screen that you're going to be opening when you first open Liquigen. Every single time. So here you can access a lot of important information in relation to Liquigen and other Django effects, software. So whether that being Emitter or GeoGen here, you can see a lot of interesting stuff. So this will be, there's a lot of stuff here which could be just anything that's posted on their channel. So it could be memes, but also a bit more serious stuff, as well as like release notes, as well as if they do simulation intuition, which there should be one of these for Liquigen in the future as well, which is more going over every single parameter, and that's more than even I know, right? So there's that. So here you can find anything on their channel, and that should be very helpful. Also up here you see your recent projects. This is both projects that you've made and also preset projects that you've opened, which is awesome. Now, moving here, you can find Learn, which once again will come up with all those tutorials and whatnot and all the videos. You can go into presets, and this is all the presets. This isn't the standard here, as there will be more in the future, or there may be less. They also will change, so don't get too accustomed to it. If you do like them, save them on like your own personal drive or something like that, as sometimes these do change. Next, we have projects. Here you can see projects that you've opened and changed, whether that's like presets, but also projects that you've also made, such as, for example, my paint spill. Ignore the fact that the Skybox isn't working at the moment. It's still an alpha, but yeah. Now, in the future, you will be able to add cool screens showing off what each thing is before you open it. But unfortunately, that is bugged right now, so I will show off how that is achieved, but I'm not going to show off, that literal sense of it being achieved, as it just crashes if you do that. Awesome. So we'll head in and we'll start a new project, where you can find open projects here and new projects. Once again, you can also find Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn for all the Django stuff. So if you want to contact them or find some more stuff in relation to this all, feel free to check it out here. But we're going to open up a new project, and here we're met with the default scene. Pretty awesome. There's quite a lot that you can do with it all, and so I just want to get you guys accustomed to the UI first. So here we have the viewport. Here is like everything that's going to be happening is going to be happening here. You can look around it. So what I'm going to be doing is dragging left mouse button, and that's going to rotate us around the project. There we go, pretty nice. Now when you hold Alt, it's going to pan it all, Also, you can scroll, and scroll is going to zoom you in and out, which will be helpful. And you can also press middle mouse button to pan as well. But outside of that, that's really all it's going to be. Now, over here, we'll see a move, a rotate, and scale button. So when I select an object, I can select this one and the emitter. When I have it on here, I'm able to move it all. So I can move the emitter up here, and it's going to start emitting from here. I can rotate the emitter if I wish. You can see the axes here. Also, you can scale it. Next off, I'm going to show you guys all the files and systems and whatnot. So here you can, start a new project, which is also with Control N, open project, Control O, recent projects. Here you can see what you've been working on and so forth. Save as, increment and save, which is helpful. You can export it here and quit. Under edit, we have undo, redo, delete, cut, copy, and paste. Most of these you'll be just using the keybinds here. But if you forget the keybinds, you can always find them back here. Simulation, you can always hard reset or reset it in case you're running into issues. You can also pause it in step once, which is just going to move this, I believe, by 1 frame. Yeah. Settings, we're going to find project settings and preferences. Now here, in project settings, you have access to, your files and the renderer. So if you want to change the renderer to make it a bit more intense, or once again, if it's running, not very great on your computer, you can always decrease the lighting quality, the SDF anti-aliasing, and so forth. But be warned that, these are not the default settings. So by changing this, you may run into further issues with how everything works and looks, but you can always reset it to default if you do run into issues. You can add notes to the project, so if you want to send this off to somebody else and have a little bit of a description of what is actually involved in this, you can write it here. Once again, you can add it here, but I'll show that off later. Next, we're going to have the thumbnail. Now this is, what I was talking about before. I can just press capture here, and this is fine and usable. As soon as I start increasing the columns and start doing some flipbooking stuff and capturing that, it's going to crash the project, unfortunately. But that is going to be how you do it. So in the future, it would be, you could go 5 by 5, and that would work. You just have to press capture again, ignore what's going on here. Unfortunately, that is not a viable thing right now, as it will just crash the program. Next, under settings, we're going to be going into preferences. And you've got general here, which is like everything in this. This is for Liquigen in general. This is not, related to this single thing, the single project, I should say. Sorry. So you can do all your play projects and loads. If you are running projects that are borderline making your computer just not really run too well, you can always open up a base scene. Click, untick, sorry, play project on load, and then you're not going to be running into issues of your computer dying every single time you try to open a project. You've also got vsync, which is also, this can be quite helpful. Once again, the frame limiter as well. If I open up the statistics, which I won't do just now, but there are statistics, and when I open them, mine will be running at around 400 to 500 naturally. But then once I run the thing, it's going to be significantly slowing the frame rate of all the UI and whatnot. You can cause issues and run into issues due to the high FPS, so generally it is good to just put this to 60. But there are occasions when you want to have unlimited. It's to some extent not too bad, but you can run into issues. Yeah, so you got shortcuts. You ever want to change any shortcuts, add new, reload them, delete them, feel free to add them in here. Camera, here's something that I'm going to do every single time. I always put it onto industry compatible. I'm just used to industry compatible, and in my opinion, it feels a little bit better. So for any of you guys who feel, not too happy with the base controls, feel free to change it to industry compatible. And once again, you got user variables, which is really up to you. But yeah, with industry compatible, it's gone down to the usual Alt and drag to move around, and then you've also got Shift and Alt middle mouse button, and that's going to pan you. And if you hold Alt and right mouse button and start dragging back and forth, you're going to be zooming in and out. Sweet, so that's the basic UI there. Next, we're going to be going into the camera mode. So here, you've got the default camera, and I'd recommend just using this for default things. But as soon as you want to be sorting out what your screen, what you're going to be rendering, really, right? You're going to be wanting to go into the camera, and you can position this all to where you want everything to be. As this is really what's going to be produced as your camera is currently set up to this camera here. So if you're running into issues with your render looking significantly different to what you're currently looking at, just make sure that you're looking under the camera and have set that all up. Otherwise, that's probably going to be the main issue. There's a couple other issues at the moment, but that can be a pretty big one. Next, we're going to be going under View. Now, here we have access to see a heap of different things. So you've got bounds, which isn't currently visible, but depending on your setups, you may have bounds. Tiles, these are all tick things, so feel free to just untick them when you're done. But here's the bounds of, all the voxels. You've got points. And if I get rid of the liquid mesh, you can see the points here. So you can see effectively what is behind the scenes of your simulation. Undo the points. Let's turn on liquid mesh again. We can turn on triangles. Make sure you have liquid mesh when you are viewing the triangles, as otherwise it won't come up. But here you can see the triangles. This looks similar to Nanite, but it's not exactly the same. Once again, we'll get rid of that. You've got all the input things, so this just means that when you've got all these colliders and drains and stuff like that, they're all going to be here, but as soon as you press play, they're not going to. That's just for making sure that, making sure you know what's going on. Here we can see, for example, this drain is just clipping out everything that's hitting it. And lastly, you got masking if that applies. Next, we have Manipulator. This is pretty helpful for if you just want to take a screen capture of all this. Same with all these camera gizmos and entity icons. Last but not least, pressing Shift S or just clicking in here will give you the statistics. This will give you, as I mentioned before, the UI frame rate, which once again, if I go into my preferences and turn off this and just set this to be 0, which will be unlimited, here you'll see it'll be running, currently because I have VSync turned on, it doesn't, which that sets it to your monitor's heart rate, but if we turn that off, it's going to be jumping up. So as you can see here, that can cause issues. It also can cause, random stuff, just a bit of extra usage that isn't necessarily needed. So I'm just going to set those there, and that's pretty fine. I'm pretty happy with 60. Yeah, and here you've got all your extra stuff. This is actually incredibly helpful, as when you're going into simulations, if you have too many, if you have too much going on, let's say I remove this drain. Now I'm going to explain all this later, so don't worry about, me clicking these things and you're just like, what's a drain? What's it for? I'll explain it all. But right now I'm just going to be showing off how the statistics can be helpful. Here, when I let this load, now this is not running the greatest, of course, because we've got a bunch of stuff. Oh, we're running into some issues. Sometimes a refresh can do that. I'm just going to quickly, to further show off what I'm trying to say, I'm just going to increase the flow. Here we can see the maximum amount of particles has been reached. And here we can see the particles being, I believe it is 5 million. And if we look in here, 5 million particles here. So just increasing this to 10 million will allow us to have more. Now the simulation does change. Simply due to all my settings being a little bit crazy. 18 meters cubed is a little bit weird. You generally wouldn't be doing that, but yeah, that's how that can be helpful. So here we can see we're using 7 million particles at this point, and it keeps going up. It keeps adding more. So let's just drop, not 50, 5 million back to what it is generally. I'm going to set this back to 1. And here, this will be back to normal. So that's something helpful that you can use to see. Once again, there are issues with too many verts, too many triangles. You can also have issues with not enough voxels and stuff like that. So yeah, you can change it all here, and a lot of that's also visible in here. So you can really see what's going on and if you are running into issues and what really is the cause of that issue. As you saw, there is a big message that comes up saying, hey, you've reached the amount of particles that is, set to your maximum. But you can also just get a little bit more, going on here in terms of statistics. Just to be, just to see if you're borderline hitting it, because you can always reduce the amount of particles. But I'm very happy that they've added that, as it means that if your computer's just running bad and it's just constantly adding more particles, and you're like, oh my gosh, dude, I can't pause this is going bad, it's just going to keep running until it hits that particle limit, and then once it hits that particle limit, that's it, right? So luckily that is a feature. It's a bit of a fail-safe in case something goes wrong. You can always Alt F4 if things are running bad. Now, something I haven't mentioned yet, but I will go over now, is, before I continue, because I probably should mention it, is the timeline here. Now, your timeline, you can press play. These should be every single frame, so if you want to go back and stuff, you can. Previous key. Now, that's generally for, like, previous key, sorry, so that's if I am keying stuff, that's going to be going to your last key. You can also skip step 1, which is what I was trying to show before. You've got loop, so you can set the loop and increase and decrease the loop. You're going to reset it here. These also have hotkeys, so pressing spacebar is going to play, pause. R is for reset. That's probably what you're going to be generally using. Here you can also see image export, so current parameters of the image export is set only for 64 frames, starting from frame 0. But you can always change that, as well as if, for example, I want to move the position, I can tap this, and I can set it to go 0 here. And I'm just going to set this, so this is going to be at 0. It's going to be where it currently is, and here I'm just going to be bringing this down, for example. This just means when I play it, it's going to be moving down. There you go, you can see it all sucking back into that. You do have options for Bezier, linear, smooth, linear, constant, and handle types, whatnot. So you can always access all this sort of stuff, which is always helpful. If I press Control and click, that's going to give me access to these. You can align them all, reset handles, change all the handles if that's helpful. Set it all to smooth, for example, linear, sorry, and it's just going to be constant speed there instead of Bezier, but you can change that all. So the next thing I'm going to be showing off is the node graph and how this all works. So here you're going to have your main things to be looking at the moment will be your simulation. Your simulation node is really what the majority of things plug into, and it's where really everything is going to, I guess, get affected. It is similar to Emitter, where how your simulation node kind of is a pretty big factor. You do have your emitter nodes and so forth, whether that's particles or flame, smoke, whatever, right? But your emitter at the moment, it only has a few controls. So I just want to say, your main things, everything really is getting plugged into your simulation. There is a little bit into your scene. That's where everything is currently. I believe they're going to be working this to be doing some USD sort of support here in regards to scene, but at the moment that's not features that are currently available. So yeah, I'm just going to go through what is currently being used and stuff for this, and I'm going to show off some extra stuff that you can add. But for this scene, the default scene, you've got a shape primitive. Now in here you can change, whether you want it to be a box, right? A sphere, capsule, a cylinder, so forth, which we can see here. Currently it's very small, but just increasing all these will give you those results here. So you can see your radius, your height, rotation. You can always reset it with these buttons here. If you want to reset everything to center and whatnot. If you want to turn off the shape, you can always do that as well. That links to our emitter. And here we've got a lot of other features such as emitter activity. So if you have a bunch of emitters, for example, plugged in yada yada, and we're just going to be plugging these ones in, big, and here. We can, you know, play. They're all going to be doing their own liquid simulations. That's all good. Now, from here, we can always turn off, for example, that cylinder. Also, once again, we can just fully get rid of that emitter, and it's not going to do any of them, so that's pretty cool. Just going to delete these. Awesome. That should be good. Back to going again. Yep. Here you can go show, so you can show it all and currently just leave everything all showing. Or you can hide it, and that just means that in here you can see it's just the liquid here. Next, we've got volume. So here you've got, this is kind of everything really that you're going to be using. This is helpful, but it is sort of, it's case-by-case basis. Here is where your main settings are going to be. There's only 3 of them. It's pretty simple at the moment, but they will add them in the future, or add more, sorry. But here you got volume, and that's just going to be doing the volume. So that's effectively the whole object. So both the outside and the everything in the inside. You've also got surface, which for flow, not for flow, for continuous generation, this is not going to make too much of a difference. I don't believe it makes any difference. I could be wrong. I potentially just, yeah, I mean, it's a very minute difference. I generally wouldn't be bothering changing these and playing around with them. For continuous generation, this makes a massive difference when it's a fill, right? When it's set to fill and it's volume, it's the whole thing, okay? See how much liquid that is? Now, if we set this to surface, it is significantly less. It is just the surface. So it's similar to how, I don't know, if you're 3D modeling an object, right? All you're seeing is the faces on the outside. You're not seeing what's inside of the object. As the inside of the object, there's nothing inside of it, right? You're just putting faces and trying to make, you know, the meshes, you know, watertight, right? But in here, you can either set it to be the whole object, like fully, you know, voxelized and everything, or you can just do the surface. Now that can be helpful, depending on what you're trying to do. And here we can go just once, or we can turn that off. We want it to constantly be going like that, or you can go reset previous liquid. These have uses I don't entirely know, but that's probably something that you can play around with and try to figure out, as I unfortunately haven't had the time to play around with every single setting, hence why I said I'm going to redo this a little bit once I have a bit more time. And last but not least, you do have access to the speed. That's going to be the speed of all the velocity, so you can change the velocities all here. Change the target, follow normals, or just keep it a fixed direction. Here we can change it to something like I don't know, we can set it to like -1, for example, and it's gonna just be hitting straight down. Or if we want to go like +5, for example, this should be trying to push it upwards. So maybe setting this to like 50, for example. It doesn't really give it too much of a if I increase the speed, it might, yeah, you can sort of see it. It tries pushing it up and then it goes back down again. But I mean, you wouldn't really do it upwards, would you? You'd probably go something like 50 to the Y, and that's going to be pushing it in the direction there, which you can see all there. And obviously changing the speed and everything is going to change, you know, how fast it's going. I'm going to reset that all though. Velocity transfer as well, but yeah. One thing I have missed, I'm going to go back over, you can import geometry here. So this can be geometry with, for example, animations. So I'm going to remove, let's not add this as an emitter, let's add this as a collider. We're going to add, for example, a wine glass that I've made. Oh, let's add this one, for example. Here we've got a wine glass. I'm just going to reset this because you can have different animations. You can also turn off animations if you don't want to use them. I have 2 objects that I've baked the animations of. I had the wrong one selected, unfortunately. You do have the opportunity to re-import, which I think is amazing. But I'm going to select the right one. And here, I might just increase the size to be, for example, 300 is pretty good size. I'm going to remove the emitter because I run into some issues with this one. But here, let's remove that. We've got our awesome looking wine glass that I've made, ignored that. I mean, I wasn't really expecting people to be looking into it, so I got a little bit of terrible mesh due to it. I did remake the mesh, but I don't have the baked details, the baked simulation onto it. So here's just a wine glass that I've made in Blender because I didn't have access to I still don't have access to I don't believe, until I start back in college. But turning on reflective, refractive, getting rid of roughness is going to give us a really cool result when we go into render node and add path tracing, wait for it to compile. That's something that I was quickly looking at. I've gone back to this because you'll see a lot what that was later in the video. But here, once we go into some HDRIs, wait for them to load, you can see some really looking things. I think they've done an awesome job with this path tracer. I think you can get some really cool looking results here. I'm waiting for it all to load. But yeah. Oh, one thing that I might quickly change as well. You notice everything's quite blurred because the transmission color here seeing this to be white. I mean, I think this is one of my favorite render engines, really, for this transmissive stuff. I was messing around yesterday. I'm like, oh, this looks really good considering it's a super basic model. I mean, the model is pretty basic, right? They're pretty low poly as well. I think it's only a bit over 1,000 tries. I think it's like 1,500 tries. I tried bringing this into Substance Sampler and Marmoset, and it was rendering it a little bit not great. And I'm just like, huh, they've stumbled across something pretty good here, actually. Future Django FX render engine, huh? I don't know, could be an opportunity, but, you know, I think this looks great. So you can get some really cool looking stuff here. Changing all these values here. I mean, you can turn off reflective and refractive. They're reflective if you want, and obviously getting rid of path tracer and stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna head back to what I was recording before because I forgot to point this out, but you've got all your features here, whether you want to pivot everything, change the master scale by like 10. It's a bit quicker than changing the natural scale here. But you've got position, which will just move. You've got the rotation. That's obviously based on your pivot point, which I have in the center. You can loop the animation, override the FPS if you want everything to run a bit slower. So for example here, we've got it running and it's going to be really slow and it's going to tip over there. You can see that's super slow. Seeing this default here, you can see it just knock over. And then with it being looped, it's pretty good. You do have frame delay and everything, but I don't find these doing too much at the moment, unfortunately. Or at the moment it just sits at nothing at the start, which is a bit annoying. So I don't know if that's something that I've done if I removed looped. I've been trying to figure this out in one of my own projects, to be honest. Oh, there we go. Well, I figured if I turn off loop animation, that fixes a problem with one of my last projects. So I have to mess around with that. That should be kind of helpful. Next, we have the collider, and here you have colliders such as, well, I mean, this collider here is this donut, really, right? And this donut, I mean, you can add really anything here. So this can be, once again, anything here, whether it's a torus, a capsule, a sphere, or whatever, right? And it just interacts here. You can always move it around. Like that, and you can see it all interacting there. And so this collider, you can be set it to inverted. And the way that that's going to work is if we, for example, put this in here, we're going to go for the radius go wider. We're going to set invert shape, and now all the water is now inside of the collider. That's pretty cool. Depending on how you want to make your sim, you get some really cool results. Like for example, if we go into here, if we go into the emitter and we set it to fill, we're going to go just once. We're going to go volume, and that should be good. You can see it'll shoots that all up, and that's pretty cool. You could also go, for example, surface, and it's just going to be less liquid, really. Awesome. So that's a bit about the colliders and how they work. You know, once again, hide them when you unselect them. That's going to be... Oops. There we go. If I hide show, there we go. You can see it's interacting and whatnot. Yeah, and turn off collider activity if you don't want it. You've also got access to appearance, where here we can change the collider itself, its appearance. So you're going to find that for ray marched rendering, the albedo is what you're going to be seeing. So if we want red, white, you know, green, blue, black, so forth. That's where everything you're going to be finding is there. You can also change it to be reflective, refractive, sorry, and change all these controls here. So if we want to go white, reduce the roughness, and for example, I'm going to show this a bit more later, but for example, going into path tracing, letting it load a little bit, just going to quickly select a HDRI, let it compile. And here you can see, ignore what the liquid's doing currently because I removed the inverted shape. So it's not set up as it was before. But as you can see here, it's all interacting. Pretty interesting. And it's where all this transmission stuff is going to be applied. You can always, once again, turn off the reflective. I would always keep the reflective on personally, as it can go a little bit weird without it. But if you don't want it, you don't need to. You can always increase the roughness there. Next, we have our drain. And so for the drain, I mean, the simple thing here is what your collider collides with the liquid, but outside of that interaction, there's nothing really more to it. The drain here, everything that touches it, it works as a kill zone. Anything that touches it, it effectively removes. So you can, for example, non-invert it. You would generally use these as an inverted thing, but it's not necessarily something that has to be used. So for example, we could go here, just play it. I'm just going to remove this collider. And here it's just deleted it all. Like, that liquid doesn't exist anymore. A better way of showing that would be, let's see if I show this, select this drain, just so I can put it to be a portion of the liquid's going to touch it. And as you can see there, any liquid that goes within it is deleted. Anything that isn't. So once again, if we go and put it over and we hit invert, we play it, it deletes everything. Now this works as like your bounding box really. You can change the shape of it all, so it can be a box if you wish. It could be a torus. You can't see it, but it's very small, so just increasing the size of everything. Yeah. You can go high, so just typing in, for example, 50, it will give me bigger numbers here. You can also press this if you want to change the bounds of the limits. I could set the maximum being like 900, for example. That would allow me to go a heap bigger if I wish, but I mean, 900 is a little bit overkill. You can also reset the bounds if you're not liking that. I'm just going to quickly reload the project to get rid of all those settings. So that's the drain. Pretty simple, pretty plain. Next we have forces. So you got a force constant. This is just, you know, your basic stuff. It's just a constant force pushing. But you've got different forces, whether that's drag or it's shape. So you can effectively, I believe this, you could probably go shape and connect it to the base, and to the base emitter, and let's see how that works. Basically what it's going to be doing is trying to push all the water and keep it connected to the shape really. So it's going to be attracting in. So we're going to go, as you can see, get sucked back into the shape, and it's pretty cool. So if I went from continuous to fill, volume, that's good. It's going to go down, it's going to bounce up, and it's going to suck into the thing, and that's pretty cool. Can give you some really cool results there. what else do we have in terms of forces? We have turbulence. That's just going to be adding a bit of movement everywhere, so you can play around with the controls. But mostly you're going to see a lot of stuff by increasing the octaves, the amplitude, frequency, gain, linearity. Animation speed does a little bit of changing, bias rotation. These last ones don't make too much of a difference from my experience, but these ones here make quite a lot of difference, whether that's you're increasing the size of the turbulence, whether smaller or larger, or increasing the speed of the turbulence, which would be under frequency. And that's going to be, do you want, turbulence to be going super duper quick, or not too much? So if I increase the amplitude, for example, it's sort of, you're not going to be seeing too much here with my current setup, but as you can see here, it's a bit more, you see how it sort of like breaks apart a bit more there. If we decrease the amplitude, for example, it breaks apart less, and you can get it pretty bog standard, pretty smooth there, but increasing that can give you some really cool results. And so is increasing the frequency there, or decreasing the frequency to make it only a small amount being affected quite slowly. That's pretty cool. Just gonna remove those. Lastly, we have the liquid appearance here, and so this is going to be your liquid. So once again, as I mentioned, for array marching, you're going to be noticing quite the difference here with the albedo. So that's just your color. You can make it look whatever you want, whether you want blood or you want like sort of like an oily look. If we went for like a very dark blue sort of there, it'll give you sort of like an oily, inky look. I think black's just going to give you that really nice one, and sitting on the path tracer could give you a cool result there if I remove the refractivity, I believe. Path tracer there is going to give you a really cool result. So yeah, changing all this, it's the same as what I mentioned before with your collider settings, so you can always change it. If I go, for example, just set it to white, set the transmission color to be like pretty light, a little bit of color in there. You can also change the index of refraction, transmission, so forth. But turning on once again the path tracer, oops, you're going to be seeing all the colors. Now currently it's just compiling all those from what I did, but I'm just going to quickly change the HDRI. For example, misty morning. Wait for it to load the HDRI. This will take a minute. It's a little bit faster when I turn off the path tracer. I'm just going to change it to a different one because that's a bit too plain. Maybe Delta 2. Here we go. Now we're getting a bit of differences here. That is with path tracing off. You can always turn it off. You still see the HDRI and whatnot, affecting all the lighting, but turning it on, oops, you get some really cool looking results here. Be warned, path tracer at the moment, it is fairly slow, so I have a pretty beefy card, my 4080, but for those of you who are not on 4090, 4080, 4070s even, like 3090s, 3080s, you're probably going to be struggling to run this too quickly. With your path tracing would only, utilize that when it comes to rendering, as sometimes that can be quite a performance hit. So I'd be intrigued to see how they improve that and move it into Imagen as well, because I believe it's got a pretty good usage in GeoGen. So we've also got the simulation node. So in your simulation node, this is going to be where all the main things you're going to be doing with your changing all the liquid, really. I'm not going to go too much into it because there's still a couple of settings that I need to, figure out a bit more. For example, these API-C ratio. I'm not too sure how everything works. I know that it does change things, and I've sort of, played around with a little bit, but I don't want to say things and say, this does that, when I'm not certain, okay? Because otherwise I'll be misleading you guys. But here you've got your voxel size. This is, I guess, the size of, well, your voxels, right? So if you see this and you're just like, you want to do a really close up and you're just like, oh, that looks kind of bad. Increasing your voxel size is going to fix this. So decreasing it, sorry. So if I set it to like a 0.8, this is going to run out of changes how it all works. That's going a bit odd. Let's change this to a continuous generation. Now everything does change. I see where I was going wrong. So if we change this to a 0.08, we're going to get a 0.08. We're going to get a very tight simulation. It's going to look super detailed, a lot more detailed compared to what the default is of, for example, well, not one that we had it's originally set to 0.12 is the default. As you can see here, the mesh is a whole lot more. You can see it's a lot less detailed, and then you can once again go for a 2. Oopsies, that's no good. We set this to be 2, for example. It's going to be a lot more chunky. This also, ignore it all breaking. I was changing something. Sorry. Here we can see it can start getting a lot more chunky. So for bigger simulations, you might want to change the voxel size. But for very small and tight simulations, you want it to be generally lower. An issue that you can run into with it being very low is, like, for example, we go 0.05, apply and reset it and just let it run. Yeah, the amount of particles has been hit. So you need to increase the particles. So for example, I go, you can always go volume, set it to fill, play once. I don't know if that's going to work. That does work because I have enough, but otherwise that's the case where you'll need to increase the particles. And as you can see here, it runs not great, but you can see the detail in this simulation is kind of insane. And just putting on that path tracer. Okay, we should be back. I turned on the path tracer. I think it was starting to load, but the issue was I realized that because I'm shooting an MP4, I will lose, an hour of recording. I don't really want to lose an hour of recording. Oopsies. But let's go. What else do we have? So you can change the voxel size. It's going to be a bit better. Step rate is just if you want a faster simulation, you can change the step rate or slow it down. The issue with changing it too much from 60, you're going to get kind of unreliable. So if you're hitting maybe 70, 75, or even 50, it's generally going to look fine. But anything more than that is kind of stretching it. So for example, putting it at 70 hertz, it's going to be a little bit faster than what 60 is. As you can see, it's a little bit slow. It's not by much, but the higher that you increase it, it does make a difference. So for example, oops. Oh, well, okay, let's do 12, for example. Oops, sorry, 12 is a whole lot faster, sorry. But you can see that looks kind of not great. See, that's where you're going to be seeing all the changes. Sub-steps is just, sub-stepping. So this is going to be, the quality of the simulation. So increasing the sub-steps is going to increase the quality of how the liquid, I guess, reacts to everything. At the cost, the Django Effects guys have stated, basically, for every sub-step, it doubles the quality of the liquid simulation, but it also halves the speed it all runs. So as you can see, it's only running... It says the UI is running smooth, and the UI runs very smooth, but the performance of the simulation is significantly slow. So it would be nice to see a bit of a performance to the simulation, like how fast the simulation is going. But, decreasing it to about 3, it's going to look a bit more realistic, but it's also going to run a bit nicer than what that was running. So you can see these will also give you different results. So don't just, play around with it and expect it to be the exact same, because no, it's not going to. As you can see here, we got a bunch of jumping around, which isn't too realistic. You can freeze the simulation. This can be toggleable, which is perfect. So if you want it to go and hit, for example, let's go to 160. We're going to hit freeze. We're going to go, for example, here, freeze. We're going to go move by 1. Oopsies, I pressed the wrong button. Let's scroll in. So control and middle mouse is going to scroll me in here. We're going to hit that one there. We're going to freeze it there. We're going to hit pause there. So when we play it, it's going to play the simulation until that point. It's going to freeze, and then you can do whatever you want. So if you see some fancy stuff, you can orient your camera to the project, for example. Look at, oh, I don't really want to do that. That's already gone around my stuff, unfortunately. It's deleted all that. But if I go look at, for example, increase the focal point, and then we can, you know, let me see. We can move it around, which I'd have to move all these settings a whole heap. Which I'm not going to be bothered doing, but you can do that and have it move around. You do that by orientation, to be honest. Let's see. You can go like that. So we can go, for example, your angle here. Oops, where are we? Set this, for example, here, and we can go over here to add another one, for example, and change it by a bit. And for example, we just play it. This isn't great because I'd have to spend a bit of time. Oops. Oh, interesting. Seems to be bugging a little bit at the moment, but in the future, that's going to, it should just freeze it, but it should still play. I should probably note that down. Yeah, hopefully there's some Jenga guys that end up watching this. As I may be uncovering a couple bugs that I'm noticing and a couple bugs that I'm not noticing that you guys might go, hey, yeah, that's not acting right. Behind the scenes. Project iterations, I'm guessing that's also, you know, how well everything's going to be, I guess, realistic everything is, and force particle distance, so I'm guessing that's, I guess, the distance between the particles, redistribute type particles of oh my gosh, particles are, you know, too close, and it might be just pushing them away a little bit. Divergence control, a PIC ratio. I don't want to say too much about this. The more APIC, the less viscous, the more unstable. Okay. So it's going to become less viscous and going to become, I guess, a bit more runny. I'm going to turn off all this freeze simulation. I'm just going to get rid of all these. This is going to become a bit more runny, which I guess you can see there, but runs a bit worse. Increasing the APIC is going to become, I guess, more viscous. Yes, it's, I guess, sticking together a bit more. It's I guess, faux surface tension, really. As surface tension isn't really an existing thing here. Reset that. And stickiness is literally stickiness. So this is faux viscosity. So increasing that is just going to make things stick a bit more. And try to withhold its shape, and decreasing it is going to make things kind of run less sticky, as you can see. So if I remove it's just going to be splashing all around, not sticking to anything, really. As you can see there. I'm just going to remove a lot of the APIC because it is playing around with some of our simulation. There we go. We got some nice looking simulation here. Yeah, otherwise you got your number of voxels, particles, triangles. Don't change this unless you need to. If anything, you can probably reduce this and it's going to run a bit better. You got meshing here, IDF smoothing, ISO value meshing. I'm not too sure about the ISO value SDF smoothing. I guess it's, oh yeah, here we go. So we got how smooth the mesh looks. The ISO values, I guess, just changing the mesh shape really, and how you want it to look. Add it, make it really clumpy there. Awesome. I didn't know that. Next, we have the ground. If you've used Emitter, you probably know how this all works. You've got checkerboard and you've got uniform color. Now, hopefully, we're going to be able to add our own textures onto this all. But you can go, for example, set the ground to be like, oh, I don't know, we can set it to like dirt colors, for example. Changing all these sorts of things. Changing the shadows, the roughness, for example, if you want it to be reflective or not. You can turn that off and whatnot. The lit as well. It doesn't seem to have too much of an impact. The lit radius it is, but neither does the shadow. But that's probably something that's going to be improved a little bit in the future. But you also have checkerboard, and you can always turn it off with none. I personally like just clicking these buttons here, the little power button here. It's just a bit quicker. You can also, change your checkerboard stuff if you want, different colors there. Yeah, the scale and whatnot. Regardless, I'm just going to set this to here because I've kind of lost what is default. I could probably reset it, but I can't be bothered. Yeah, so that's the basic controls there. We've got light directional here. You've got your directional, you've got your elevation of the light, the azimuth, and that's just going to be your rotation. Your intensities here, your colors, if you want to add a bit of color to it all. And here it's sun color. I don't believe that's usable. I don't believe there's any sunlight there at the moment, so I don't think that you can use that at the moment. But regardless, you've got a skybox, which you've probably seen me open up a couple times. Here you can set it to your atmosphere, which I believe runs the best at the moment, just due to it being, a skybox, right? You're not trying to calculate those tricky positions. Here you can change your relay scattering. If you've used GeoGen, you probably have a little bit of an understanding of how this is all utilized. I mean, it's the same in most programs that have these sorts of skyboxes. So we can change these here. It's nothing too crazy. Personally, I feel like I prefer the one in GeoGen. It's the same, but I feel like, we're not getting too much out of these controls. They're a bit large without changing, so I think we're missing some controls there. But you got your height of the center of the ozone, thickness of the ozone, radius, and that's just going to be changing slight differences to, like, I guess the gradient that you're going to be seeing there. Otherwise, I like this for like performance reasons, but I will always use an HDRI. So you will find, just download your own HDRI, so do not come stock. I've downloaded my own, and here you can access them all here. Just takes a second to load, and you can run through them. So it's just with the click of a button. You got all these different cool HDRIs that are giving me different results here. Apparently I have two of the exact same one. I should probably fix that. But yeah, we've also got brightness. That's going to change the brightness. And I believe it's currently loading. That current one is 4K XR, which takes a bit. But you got the brightness here. Which doesn't seem to be doing anything. It generally does. It could be a bug, or it could just be that I need to turn on path tracing. There we go. There we go. Now we can see it affecting it all. I'm just going to turn off the path tracing. And we've got azimuth, which is going to be your rotation, which once again is also not working. I believe this generally works while using ray marching, but sometimes you run into issues with it being pretty new. But as you can see here, I'm going to turn on path tracing. You can see it rotating. I could be wrong. Maybe that doesn't work normally, but I thought it did in prior testing, but I could be wrong completely. Next, yeah, I mean, scene, I've kind of gone over it. It's not usable at the moment. Like, you plug your things in, right? But outside of that, you're not going to... Oh, here we go, lights. Here we've got our area light. Use your directional, it feeds into the skybox, but here we've got stuff. So here, for example, we've got this area light, which is incredibly small. Just pressing W is going to allow me to rotate this area light, for example. Q to move it, W once again, R to scale, R to reset, sorry. E, usually it's E, I believe. Don't know why that's not working. Oh, maybe you just can't, you can't scale it normally. Usually it is E to scale. As you can see, I can scale that primitive, but you can't do that with this. You can turn off double-sided if you only want one side. But yeah, one thing that would be nice would be a way to switch between them through here instead of having to delete the light source and add another point light, for example. that's just a request, but yeah. I can't actually see where this point is. This light is, sorry. I wish there was this thing where you could. You usually can see the lights, but for some reason they haven't added that yet, whether that's, you know, issues with how the program is currently set up. But I would assume they'll add that in the future. Anyway, I believe that's everything we want there. We have cameras here, so you can lock the cameras, for example. So if I go into my camera, I'm going to set it to somewhere where I think looks cool. And that looks pretty cool. And we like this. I can press lock, and now I can, you know, do my normal moving, and it's not going to do anything. You've also got access to change here the position. Now, once again, you can click this here. This button, and it's going to add it to your timeline, and you can keyframe it if you want to do that. You can click it once again as well to. You can effectively with this add control, and you can go look at, for example, and you can get it to look at objects. They might add like oscillators and stuff in the future, which will allow you to change all that. Hello, post-production, Toby here. I made an oopsie. So basically you can add like oscillators and cycles. So for example, we've got this, and if we hook it up to your angle, which we've just double clicked here, and we've hooked it up here, you can add these. So I'm just going to quickly set something up here. So here we go. I've just quickly hooked it up. I've set the parameters in. Just make sure you select into the camera. I've just slowed down the frequency, and as you can see here, we spin around while looking at the object. Now obviously you can play around with the camera settings, but that is just to show you that it does exist. It does work. I don't want to sell the team short. They've done an amazing job, okay? But yeah. But you've got your angle, pitch, roll, near clipping, far clipping. Anybody that uses most DCC programs will know about, you know, those general controls. Projection, so whether you want to go orthographic, which doesn't seem to change anything, or perspective, field of view as well, which is running into some issues, I believe, when it comes to rendering, but that's still a nice feature. Display resolution, this is incredibly important, so I'm going to make a very important note here. Display resolution is important, as you can change this whether you want to use 720p, 1080p, 4K. I added this manually, so you can add stuff 1K squared. So for example, I can go, for example, 2000 by 2000 and just click plus, and then we can write 2K squared, which will come up here. Usually would come up there, 2K squared. Just enter, there we go. I accidentally removed that. You can also reset it all here, and whatnot. You can save this, so if we go add that and look into our favorites, we can see here if we want to change that later. You can also see the timeline as well here. I should probably bring this up. So if you want to see you struggling to play around with all these, you can change them all here. Randomize, it's going to randomize some parameters that you have set to randomize. Let's see what else we got. Preview, fit to display. I don't know if that's doing anything. Backplate, if you want to add a backplate, so this can be just importing an image and using it as a backplate, as you'd expect. Your export image, or however you want to export it. So if you want to export Alembic or anything like that, you can export the mesh. So for example, through there, or you can export the thing. Export particles. Sorry. I don't know what volume's for then entirely, but here you've got access to exporting the mesh, so you can export it into Alembic, FBX, OBJ, your usual stuff. You can export the frames and whatnot, so just seeing the directory and whatnot. The amount of frames, your first frame, same with particles. But here we're going to be exporting, for example, an image. Here we have access to our render all. So this just means that everything's going to be rendered, not the background or anything like that, but the whole thing's going to be rendered, I guess, as is, to a good extent. Otherwise, if you want your background and everything, you can export just the viewport, or you can export just the alpha, refract, so forth. You can also add a capture and go, for example, depth if you want a depth pass and so forth. But I believe RenderRoll will export all of these on with it instead of just manually. I could be wrong though. Next we have flipbook and sequencing. So you can export a flipbook, which for those of you who know flipbooks, it's just exporting a bunch of, I guess, images, and it's just placing them all into one big image. So you set the parameters of it. It's just going to be one image, next image, next image, and these are going to be, for example, all those frames, so 64 frames, onto those 8x8. Otherwise, you've got sequence, which once again, here's where this is important. As you can see, we have this set to be 2k squared. It's not 2k squared here. This is why I said it is important to note that, because it's a common mistake that you can make, but it just means that, you know, for export, if you want to export a couple at, like, for example, 1k or, you know, 200 by 200p, just to see a really quick render, you can do that while leaving the camera at a nice resolution, and then going back and changing this up later, or vice versa. It's just, I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like personally, it would be just a bit easier to remember all in here. But there are reasons behind it all. Here you can change to the first frame, so whether you want to render from frame, you know, 10 or 100 onwards. Next, we've got number of frames, so if you want to render 200 frames, you can see it here, and how this all moves here. So you can see what you're rendering here under the export image. Just going to delete these so you don't get confused. Next, we're going to have frame stride, so this is going to be, I guess, how many frames it's going to be, paying attention to. So if you want to render every second frame, you can do that, or just render every one frame. It's still going to be rendering 200 frames with, for example, frame stride 2. So it's going to be rendering technically 400 frames, and it's just going to be ignoring the in-betweeners, or you can go like by threes, for example. There's that. You change your directory, just click into here. You'll do a directory. You can change the file naming convention here. You can export PNG, TGA, and XR, which also just means that you'll have to, because these will be image sequences, you have to go into something like it's something that will compile them all. So whether that's like DaVinci, Premiere, After Effects, and so forth. You can change the bit depth of the images. 8's going to be a bit quicker, but 16's going to have a bit more information. Just click here to export now. Once again, you can also export through that. You can check the export location through this. So my default location will be here, as I haven't set it, in the directory, which you can see here. Yeah, that's going to be good. Also, once you're finished rendering, you can just open it up here, and it's just going to be a bit easier. Here you've also got the render settings. So this is going to be your samples per pixel. So that's going to be 128 samples per pixel, which means it's going to have a bit of noise. 256 will be a bit better. 512 is going to look pretty damn mint. And onwards is just going to give you less stuff. So if you render it and you see a little bit of like speckling and stuff like that, that is probably your samples per pixel, and just increasing that is going to be better. Your samples per batch will also change that. You can also do holdout shapes and stuff like that. So if you want the shapes but you want to remove it, and in post add a rendered shape from a different program, you could do that if everything's the same. So you can ignore hide and holdout. That's all got different settings there, and I think that is mostly it. The only thing that I haven't really gone on to would be the render node here, which I've gone over into a touch, but here you've got path tracing. So you got your normal ray marching here. You can turn off shadows if you don't want them, but you've got your path tracing here. You've also got photon mapping, which is going to give you some really nice, reflections here of the liquid, and you can see it all loading here. So your photon mapping is going to give you a very similar. Your photon mapping is going to give you a very similar result to what something, your caustics is going to do. It effectively simulates caustics. Due to the nature of how they, calculate it, it's called photon mapping, but it works the same as how caustics would work. You've got samples per frame, so that's just setting your samples. I wouldn't set this too high, as this is going to make everything run a lot worse. Once again, if you want things to run a bit better, you can change the samples to be 256, for example. That's going to significantly decrease the samples. but it's also going to run significantly faster. So you can see everything's very noisy. But soon to be like 1024. Oh, 1024 for example, it's going to be running a bit slower. It doesn't make too much of a difference, but you can see it really starts slowing down a bit once things start going a bit ham. So seeing this maybe like, I don't know, 128. It's going to run a bit better in those trickier situations. Yeah, you can see it's a little bit faster. Not by much though. Your bounce as well going to make a massive impact. So this is like how many bounces effectively the light is going for your path tracing. So here you can see it looks horrible, but it runs super smooth, and increasing that to like 3, for example, it's going to make a significant more impact. Up to 5, which is normal, and you can go higher than that, but it's just going to be using a heat. You got environment map import. Yeah. Next, you've got, you know, back faces, pixel footprint. You got denoiser, which is going to make things run a little bit, look a little bit more smoother, but it you know, at the moment it's still in the works and still getting improved. You can change this all here. So at the top, we can, up the top here, the node graph, we can search. So we can search, for example, ground. That will find that node. So if we have a heap of nodes, we can find it there. Also, we've got the node graph, and here you're going to find a bunch of different, well, every node that you use. So instead of searching, you can go into here and select whichever one you want. Like, for example, add a ground. Oops, sorry. You can select the ground. It selects everything that's in here. Sorry. That's just your outlier. You can randomize all seed parameters. That's not going to change anything that's seed. You can move and center things. Here you can go. Yeah, I mean, you can probably find a lot of these for yourself. Just changing like the zooms. Oopsies, that zoomed a little bit to the side. Increasing the size of it all if you want to focus on that, and if you got a heap of nodes going. I'm still a beginner. I can go over some of my projects that I've been working on for anybody interested. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, there's not too much really more to it. A lot of it is just playing around with how everything's going to be looking. So, for example, here, I'm running into some issues with this project, right? As I've uncovered, I believe, a bug of liquid breaking. At the moment, my liquid needs to go in there, but at the moment I'll have the liquid go, and then it's going to, the glass will move. Unfortunately, it all breaks through, but this is going to be some wine spilling simulation. I'm just trying to get into contact with some of the devs to see if this is on my end with the mesh not being thick enough, which shouldn't be the issue. What else do we have? Sphere drop. This is something that I've been working on, which looks really cool. Got just, you know, a bunch of liquid in a sphere. I mean, what more do I need to say? You can just sort of see how it all runs. Unfortunately, I'm running into issues when rendering. Seem to be known issues, so at least that's getting worked upon. But as you can see here, I mean, it just looks sick. I mean, I might change the parameters here and decrease the voxel size, something like 0.1, just to get a bit more. To make it a bit more realistic, but sorry, everything, yeah, it generally runs not as bad, but with me recording and not wanting to lose anything, I don't want to, you know, lose this all. We got a paint splash, which is something that I was working on a bit ago, where it is leaking. I don't know why that's happening. Just gonna re-import. And hopefully... Why is this not working? Hold on. I'm not too sure why that's not working, actually. We've got that. Imported geometry. It doesn't exist. Add into shapes, and... There we go. Now we can see. This has changed since I was recording this. You guys might have seen me working on this. But here you can see some basic simulation that I've really set up, just running incredibly slow because I've changed the voxel size to an incredibly small thing. I should probably, you know, change that to like a 0.1, just to run at least a little bit better. But as you can see, it just looks sick. You can do a lot of playing around with things. I have a lot of unnecessary stuff. I could potentially add another drain in here to remove. Oh, maybe the drain wouldn't be a good idea, but as you can see, some cool effects going on here. The thing resets because I'm using an oscillator, which is something I haven't mentioned either. Something that you can do is adding cycle, constant, combine, oscillators and stuff. So they have added these that you can play around with, and these will change how things interact. So as you can see, it's going a little bit ham, but it's kind of throwing liquid everywhere and it's running terribly, but it's because my drain's too big. But yeah, you have access to changing all these. I'm not going to go too much over them because this video is getting way too long. I'm not going to be able to edit it all. Also, we're just running into a bit of stuff here, but yeah, you got your rotation. I'll let you guys figure a lot of the stuff out, but if you guys know oscillators and how they all work, it's going to be pretty simple. Otherwise, yeah, it's just changing really the phase, frequency, base, and all these rotations of what you want rotating and by how much. Will give you different results. Really, you can change like the rotation stuff of objects and make things change. That could be whether you want, I don't know, you want, if I change this, for example, to be a cylinder, I don't know, bring it out here, let's rotate it by 90 here, increase this, I'm going to decrease that, add the rotation, just gonna sorry, yep, like that. Then we can add, for example, an oscillator, and it's just gonna play around with the liquid there, and it's gonna give me some really crazy results. So as you can see there, it's giving me some crazy results with the liquid. It's increasing the height to maybe like a 20, will give you some really weird looking things. Maybe 5 there. That's running terribly. I got way too many particles. 3. And let's change that to maybe like a 10. Maybe it's a bit big and it's gone a bit crazy, but you get some cool looking shapes with that going. But otherwise, there's something that I forgot, but I should probably mention, as it is a bit important. Otherwise, yeah, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. It took, you know, almost 1.5 hours because I kind of went a little bit overboard with everything. But yeah, hopefully you learned some stuff. Hopefully you guys now know, I guess, pretty much literally everything that exists in the program as of this current point, as of, you know, version 0.1.0, which is literally the first version available to any of us publicly, even though it's still a closed alpha. If you own the Jenga suite, you will have access to this, whether that's monthly educational license or yearly. I mean, not yearly. You own it, I guess, forever. But you know, you're getting the maintenance for it, and your maintenance overlaps with this all. But otherwise, yeah, I hope this was helpful. I hope you learned some stuff. There was a couple things that I didn't know about that after going through my own tutorial. I'm just like, hold on a minute, I didn't know that this happened. So, yeah, I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that this was entertaining, because you know, this is a long ass video. And I definitely am going to have to do a bit of cutting, but also I'm hoping that nobody's kind of fallen asleep through this either, because it does take quite a while going through every single parameter, which I wasn't planning on doing. But yeah, if there's any new updates or anything like that, I'm going to make a video on. Otherwise, if there's any tutorials you guys want to see, potentially one of the ones that I showed off, I can go over and show you how I've made them. They're really basic and bare bones at the moment, but I can still go over them. I'm also going to be doing my own projects and further going over some new stuff later, but that's something that I'm going to be doing in the future and potentially make some videos on. But until now, I mean, I'm back in college, so don't expect as many tutorials, as well as just the case I'm still working as well outside of college. So, you know, assessments, college, and bloody work. You don't have too much time outside of that, really. So I'll see what I can do, but it's probably going to be mostly in weekends that I can get this sort of stuff done. So I just wanted to get something done before I'm not really going to have too much time. This is literally the last day. Tomorrow I'm back in college for a whole year. So thank you guys for watching, and hope you guys have a good one. Like, subscribe if it was interesting, so, you know, more people can learn the basics. But otherwise, yeah. Thank you, and I appreciate you watching. See you later. Bye-bye.